Hello once again. I've got another piece of neat vintage telephony to show you today. This is the telephone that I now have hooked up to my phone service here in my apartment. This is a Northern Telecom Meridian M9316 POTS phone. Now mine is actually branded Astra. Astra Telecom was the company that took over Northern Telecom's POTS phone and Meridian 1 phone manufacturing when Northern Telecom went out of business in 2001. And this phone was made after 2001. But yeah, this is a POTS phone, but sold under the Meridian name, and that is because this phone, you can probably tell, was styled to fit in a business environment, to fit in alongside North Star phones and Meridian 1 phones, even though it is just an ordinary POTS phone. And between the aesthetics and some of the features this phone has, as a result of that, this, in my opinion, is a really cool phone. This is a very nice POTS phone, just for general use. And in today's video, we're gonna go over it. I'll show you all the features it has and demonstrate them as far as I can. So, as far as I can tell, Northern Telecom introduced this phone around 1994 or 95. Astra took over manufacturing of it in 2001. My unit was made in 2008, which even surprised me that it was such a late phone, although I shouldn't be surprised, as I've found in many cases Northern Telecom's products from the 90s or even the 80s continued to be manufactured literally into this decade. I don't know when the M9316 ended production, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was made into this decade. Heck, maybe they're still in small volume production today, I don't know. Astra Telecom no longer exists. They were bought out by Mitel in 2014, I believe. But yeah, these were made for a very, very long time. They're not as common as other Northern Telecom phones from the same era. At the time I bought this phone, there were only 3 or 4 of them on eBay in total. Online retailers that specialize in telecom equipment for businesses, many of them are still selling this phone, either brand new or more commonly refurbished. So yeah, these are really common phones to find for the most part. Personally, I've only ever seen one in the wild. It was when I worked for the provincial government a couple of years ago. There was one of these in a conference room there. So as far as the features this phone offers, it's really nothing out of the ordinary. Northern Telecom themselves made fancier POTS phones, namely the Vista series of phones. But the features it does offer, and the way that it presents them, makes this phone very nice in my opinion. Speaking of the Vista phones, I should mention, just purely out of interest, that it appears to me that this phone is pretty much the same as the Vista 250 phone. It's just where the Vista 250 was a phone meant for consumer use, like home use with its sort of radical design. The M9316 was meant for business use, so while the phones are cosmetically completely different, they do offer, as far as I can tell, nearly identical features, and they have the same display and everything. I've wanted to get a Vista 250 or its lower end cousin, the Vista 225, which is the same phone but without call waiting capability. I've been wanting to get one of those ever since I saw one back when I worked at Bell Canada. I saw one in a cubicle, but those phones don't seem to be very common at all. This phone, however, seems to be fairly easy to find quite affordably. So let's go over this thing here. So we'll start with the display. Quite an interesting display on this phone. It is a 3-line display, and actually I'll crank the contrast up here so you can see what's going on here. So we have 2 dot matrix lines, and the third line below those is an alphanumeric line, segmented. And then we have a couple of 7-segment sections. And we have some graphic enunciators, so that's one thing that makes this thing sort of stand out from a lot of other Northern Telecom phones like it, is the graphic, the alphanumeric section and the graphic enunciators. I think they're quite interesting. The Meridian M9000 line, actually there were two lines of business-oriented POTS phones that Northern Telecom made, the M8000 and the M9000. The M8000 series stem from the absolute basic, most basic phone with no display, no memory keys or anything like that, up to the higher end M8000 series phones, which are like this phone, but the display was a simpler one. The most high-end M8000 series phones just had a two-line dot matrix display, which is what a lot of Northern Telecom POTS phones have. But then the M9000 series added this fancier display, which I quite like. And the display tilts to wherever it's most readable, so that's very nice. We have 4 navigation keys here, up, down, left, right. That is an indicator light, blinks when the phone's ringing. It flashes slowly when you have a voicemail waiting for you, so very nice LED light. Here's the handset, and as I've mentioned before, exact same handset used on, you know, every Northern Telecom phone from the early 80s all the way through to basically the very last of the Northern Telecom phones. So this will work on a Northstar phone or a Meridian 1 phone or anything like that. The switch hook is electronic. There it says Astra. Older ones have the old Northern Telecom molding here. And there's a little label. Take off this plastic cover, put a strip of paper with your own phone number or whatever. And this is, I don't know if I'm going to get a reorder tone if I leave the handset off the hook. This is a loudspeaker. So this is a hands-free capable phone, which you can probably tell by the hands-free button there. And yeah, it's got a nice loudspeaker. It gets plenty loud for my use, and is very nice sounding as well. So you'll notice when I take the phone off the hook, you see one of the graphic annunciators there representing that the phone is off the hook. And something that I don't really like about this phone, just, you know, because, you know, it works differently than most telephones, is when you have the phone off the hook, when you put it back on the hook, notice there's like a 2-second delay, and during that 2-second period you can still hear the dial tone coming through the handset. I'm not a fan of that. I wish it would just go on hook as soon as you put it down. If I had to guess, I would say they probably designed it this way just to, you know, give you some grace if you're on the phone and you like accidentally hit the switch hook with your finger or whatever. Although modern telephone exchanges actually already account for that. You have to hold down the switch hook for a couple of seconds before it finally releases the call. So anyway, just a little quirk there. And you can see, obviously, we've already got the date and time there. You can set it manually, or it'll get it from the telephone exchange when a call comes in. Hidden under this cover slides over. A lot of Northern Telecom phones, POTS phones, did this. You slide this over, and there's a secret button there, and that's how you get to the settings menu. So I'll demonstrate it here. You press it. 10 items and lists use up and down the view, and you can scroll through the things you can set, and you just follow the instructions on the display. And when you're done, you can hit release. So very good. And moving down on that note, we have hold and release buttons. And notice, because this is styled to take after the Northstar and Meridian 1 phones, you do get standard rectangular hold and release buttons. On consumer-oriented Northern Telecom POTS phones, the hold button was just a normal sized button, like every other button, and it wouldn't be red in color. And usually on Northern Telecom's POTS phones, if they had a release button at all, which most of them didn't, the only ones I can think of that did were the Vista phones. But it's still orange in color, but it's not rectangular, and it won't say release. Instead, it'll say goodbye, which I think is kind of cutesy, but That's what they decided to do. There's your dial pad right there. It takes after the Meridian 1 series of phones. And you get your standard volume control, which takes after the Northstar and Meridian 1 phones. And then you've got your function buttons and 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 memory buttons, they are called. Buttons where you can store numbers to be dialed when you hit the button. You can see I've got 3 of them programmed here already. This one where I've labeled timer, that does not dial a phone number. That's the one feature you can enable on the phone that requires one of the memory keys to be taken. You press this button while you're on a call and it shows you a timer just to show how long you've been on the call. Press it again and you're back to the normal screen. So yeah, when you enable that feature, it prompts you to select one of the memory buttons to program the timer button into. But you can see these buttons, they look sort of similar to the Northstar buttons, and the keycaps for all of them, even the ones that aren't programmable, they are all removable. However, the keys are slightly different from Northstar keys. They're slightly different in size, and you can see they're a little bit rounded, so they're not swappable with Northstar buttons. But I'll briefly go through here. Callers, so when somebody calls you, this phone keeps a log of the last, I think, 100 numbers that called you, the last 100 times you were called. And when you press callers, you can scroll down through the list of all the people who called you. It shows you the name if it has it, the number if it has it, the time and date that they called, how many times they called you if they called more than once. That's a nifty feature. It'll tell you if it was long distance or not, which it can only do if it gets the number. And it'll tell you if you answered or not when they called. So it's kind of interesting. Whether or not you answer the call, it goes in the log, which is very nice. You can set it so that only numbers that you haven't answered go in the log, but I've set it so that every call goes in the log. So yes, very nice. Delete, standard delete button, you can use it to delete entries in the log, use it to erase the entire call log, and use it to erase anything programmed into the memory keys. Link, that is a standard POTS phone function. Other phones call it flash. Northern Telecom always called it link. All it does is it artificially closes the switch hook and then opens it back up like 1 second later, and you'd use this to access special features offered by the telephone exchange, such as initiating a third party on a call, so a three-way conference call. If you had a call waiting call come in while you were on the phone, pressing link would put the call you were on hold and connect you to the person who was calling you. Redial, that's obvious. Dial the last number that you tried to call. Dial, so this basically just means whatever's on the screen right now, dial it. And of course you got the hands-free button. Pressing it goes into hands-free mode. I'll demonstrate it right now. You can hear the dial tone. There's a little red LED to let you know you're on hands-free. Pressing it again mutes the built-in microphone, so you can hear the party, but they won't be able to hear you. Very nice feature. Very good. You've already seen me demonstrate contrast, adjust the contrast of the display. Directory is your call directory, so in addition to the 8 memory keys, there is a separate directory where you can store, I believe, up to 30 numbers. And I'll go through it here, and I'll have to keep the camera still so I can block numbers that I don't want you to know. But oh, that's interesting. I didn't label that one. This is the number to call local weather. You call it and you go through an automated menu and it gives you a recording or a synthesized voice that tells you the weather, which is very good. I'm going to delete that because I didn't get the label with it. But yeah, anyway, I can press down and scroll through all the numbers There's Castel, which is a long distance service. And what I'll demonstrate right now is adding that weather number back in. So I'm going to hit save, enter number. I believe it was 636. I forget what it is. So the memory keys and the 30 number directory, they're entirely separate. So technically there's 38 numbers that you can store in this, but only 8 can go on the keys. So I have weather out on a memory key, but I want it in the directory as well just because. So I'll hit this and it tells me what it is. These weird characters, these 3 little things that look like pause symbols, they are pause symbols. So when you put in a number, you can enter a pause, which means the phone will wait, I think 1 or 2 seconds before it enters the next number, which is useful if you want to store a number and automate having to go through a series of menu options to get to what you want. So in this case, when I dial this weather number here, the first thing it asks is, do you want English or French? Press 1 for English. So I have the 1 here. And I actually have 3 pauses here because 1 or 2 pauses weren't long enough. The phone would still be ringing. So if I only have 1 or 2 pauses in this instance, it would dial the 1 while the number was still ringing before the system even picked up. So 6364991. So I'm going to go in the directory and I'm going to hit save. 6364991, pause 1. Go save. And now I can punch in the name, which is just using the dial pad, just like texting back in the old days before predictive text on an old cell phone. Weather, save to end, save. And there, that's how you enter a number into the directory. So let's demonstrate making a call. Let's see what the weather's going to be. So I'm going to hit weather, and I'm going to hit dial. Oh.
Welcome to it.
Well, that's interesting. Apparently even 3 pauses aren't enough. It depends on how long the system takes to pick up. So I'm actually going to change that to 4 pauses. 6364991, pause 1. Save that memory key. WEATHER. Save. Let's try it again. Weather, dial. Mute.
Welcome to Environment Canada. For St. John and County, press 1. For Grand Manan and Coastal Charlotte County, press 2. For Sussex, Kennebecasis Valley and Kings County, press 3. For St. Stephen and Northern Charlotte County, press 4. For the forecast for the next 48 hours and the extended forecast, press 1.
Forecasts for New Brunswick issued at 4 p.m. Tuesday, April 9th, for tonight, Wednesday, and Wednesday night. St. Stephen and Northern Charlotte County for tonight, cloudy. Snow beginning this evening. Snowfall amounts 5 to 10 centimeters. Winds east 20 kilometers per hour. Low -2, wind chill -8 overnight. For Wednesday, snow ending in the morning, then mainly cloudy with 30% chance of flurries or showers. Winds northeast 20 kilometers per hour, becoming light in the morning. High +4.
Well, there's demonstrating a call. So I better update the entry of the weather in the directory. And I'm going to hit this arrow key to modify the number. I'm going to add a 4th pause in there. And 1. Save to end. And it gives me the opportunity to modify the name if I want. But I can just hit save to end. And there's that. Now, I will demonstrate a call coming in on this. Before I do that, though, I will demonstrate the 4 ringtone options that this thing has. Wow, my frog just went AWOL for some reason. But there's 4 different ringtones you can set on this, and they are all copied from the North Star systems. All the same ringtones. So, I'll press star. So that's the first ringtone option, which is the one I set. Obviously it's my favorite. Down for the next ringtone. And save to end. So yeah, the 4 standard North Star ringtones. So let's make a call on this. So I'm going to use my laptop to call from my Gmail account. And because it's going to be long distance, I'm not going to answer that. But I will leave a voicemail message. So we'll demonstrate what this thing does when a voicemail comes in. So I'm going to dial my number here. Oh yeah, the display's backlit. Now notice that weird ringtone. Rogers is actually doing that. My phone service is actually doing that because it's long distance. It's a long distance alert.
Hi, you've reached Florence Mitchell. I can't come to the phone right now, but please leave your name and number after the beep, and I will get back to you as soon as I can.
Hello, this is just a test of the voicemail calling from Google Voice on my laptop. And I hung up, so let's see how long it takes for the voicemail notification to come in. And right there it says message waiting. And it's got a little arrow there, which means that there's more than one notification that we need to look at. So I press right, and it says 1 new caller. So there's 2 messages on the display here. You can see the red LED indicator flashing there to let us know. And it says we have 1 new caller. Well, who called? Well, we hit the callers button. And it says callers list. There's 1 in the list. Press down. And we don't know the name or number, but we know the time and date that they called. They called only once. And the little telephone with the handset on the hook means we did not answer. And there was a little N there in the lower left corner, but while I had the camera off, I left the callers list and now it's not there anymore. That little N means it's a new call. It means we haven't looked at it yet. But now because we have looked at it here in the callers list, that N disappeared because it's no longer new to us. We already looked at it. So that's what it means. I'm going to hit delete. Just delete it from the call log. Callers list is empty. And we have this message waiting. Well, I've got my voicemail programmed in here with a pause before it puts in my little PIN code. So I'll hit voicemail and we'll hit. We don't have to hit dial. I can just hit hands free, and I'm going to hit it twice to mute the microphone because we don't need it.
Please enter your password. You have 1 new message. First new message received at 8:06 p.m. from an outside caller.
Hello, this is just a test of the voicemail calling from Google Voice on my laptop.
To erase this message, press 7. To reply to it, press 8. To save it, message erased. End of messages. Main menu.
Alright, and in a moment the message waiting notification should disappear and the light should stop blinking. I find sometimes it doesn't, and it looks like it might not do it right now. It seems to me that when I'm in my voicemail, I actually have to press star when I'm all done. That's the menu option to hang up. So let me try that again. Voicemail.
Please enter your password. You have no. Thank you for calling. Goodbye.
Now it should disappear. And it does. Now if it didn't disappear and I didn't have, a way to disappear, I don't have to leave that message there forever and ever. There's actually an option. Go in the options, down, down, down. Message waiting, and you can press star to clear it if it's showing and you don't want it showing anymore. So that's very nice. Looking at the other options, live dial pad means that, well, I'll turn it on and demonstrate it, but it means you don't actually have to take the phone off the hook or hit the hands-free button. You can literally just start punching numbers while the phone is idle, and as soon as you've punched in a valid number, it dials. So I will turn that on, and I'll just dial my voicemail number.
Please enter your password.
And you can see it immediately went off hook and dialed what I typed there.
Please enter.
So that's how that works. I don't like it, so I will turn it back off. Area codes is sort of just it's a nice sort of just neat little housekeeping option. Basically, you can enter whatever local area codes that you deal with. So here in New Brunswick, the area code is 506. And that is just so when a phone call comes in that has that local area code, when the phone displays it, it'll just strip off the area code. It's a local area code. You don't need to see it. So any local calls that comes in with an area code that you've punched in the area code list, phone will just strip it off to make it a bit cleaner to look at. Kind of a nice feature. So that's pretty much all the features of this thing that I want to demonstrate. I'll give you a quick little physical overview. So there's the side profile. There's this, this is a stand that you can take off if you want. For wall mounting, you can take it off and actually flip it around so that the angled side is angled in the other direction, so the phone is up like this when it's on the wall, which is nice. The phone itself is quite trim for a POTS phone, not very thick or hefty, kind of nice. Now something I wish this thing could do, like what I'd like to do right now is take the phone off the hook and hit release to put it back on the hook. But when you hit release on this phone, it goes back on the hook for a couple of seconds and then it goes off hook again and I can hear the dial tone. This is supposedly just so when you're on a call and the call's over, if you want to make another call right away, you can just hit release. It waits a couple of seconds for the exchange to recognize that you've hung up, and then it takes it off hook again so you can make the next call. So there is a valid reason. I just wish it would just stay off hook when you do that. So I'm going to flip the phone over, and I guess we'll find out if Rogers' VoIP-based phone service does a reorder tone when you leave the handset off the hook for too long. So there's your telephone line coming in, and you can see this this jack that looks like it's for a second phone line. It's even labeled 2. Well, this is only a single line phone. That jack is actually just a basically just a tap off the telephone line. So when you plug the line in the first jack, it's mirrored through the second jack, so you could use the second jack to plug in an answering machine. Oh, I've learned my answer. Or I've learned the answer to my question. Rogers does put out a reorder tone. That was startling. I'll see if I can do this. But basically, you could plug an answering machine into this number 2 jack, another phone even if you wanted to. Just a nice way to plug something else into the phone itself without having to tap it off the phone jack, like the jack leading to the outside of the building or whatever. So that's quite nice. There's where the handset plugs in. No headset jack on this, no headset capability, or at least no native headset capability. And of course this phone, with all its features and its LED backlit display, it needs external power. So there's a 16 volt AC transformer plugged into the wall, which plugs into this. That was standard fare for a lot of Northern Telecom's POTS phones, you know, because they have memory for storing numbers and customizable ringtones and all that. They needed external power. And here it is. This was actually made in China, which is really interesting. I would assume the older ones were made in Canada, but yeah, this one being made so late in 2008, it was actually made in China. I didn't know any of Astra's stuff was ever made in China. There you can see 2008, November 17th. Black, obviously this is black, but you could get these in a white color, or ash as Northern Telecom called it. I think for this particular phone, the black looks far, far nicer. I think it's a far nicer aesthetic than the white. There's the ringer equivalence number, 1.4, quite a heavy load, particularly considering that this thing is powered by the electrical grid. But I guess the reason it has such a high ringer equivalence number is because when it does lose power, this thing is still able to ring, so I guess the ringer must use all that power. With that said, 1.4 is still awful high for a phone with a electronic ringer. Western Electric 500 rotary phone with a electromechanical bell ringer is only a 1.0, so why this thing is 1.4? Not really sure. Now, speaking of functioning without electrical power, I want to demonstrate a really, really weird thing that this phone does when a call comes in while there is no electrical power. So you can see I have unplugged it from the electrical power. It is still plugged into the telephone line, however. When I lift up the handset, you can still hear a dial tone. The volume keys don't function anymore because the sound is being powered purely by the phone system. So the amplifier in the phone itself, which the volume control needs to work, that's not functioning anymore. But I want to demonstrate something really weird, and that's the ringtone when it's not getting electrical power. So obviously the 4 custom ringtones, the North Star based ringtones, the ringer for those is powered by the electrical grid. So when there's no electric power, those ringtones don't function. So the phone has a line powered ringer that functions when there's no electrical power, and it's really gross sounding. What I mean by that is it's just a really bad, eerie sounding ringtone. I don't like it at all. It's very unsettling. And it's surprising because Northern Telecom knows how to make a pleasant sounding line powered electronic ringer. My Northern Telecom solo phone has a very nice sounding electronic ringer. That's a phone that's powered purely by the telephone line. But why they put such a gross sounding ringer in this, especially when it has a full range speaker rather than a piezo buzzer for the ringer like a lot of POTS phones has, I don't know, but I'm going to call it here. So you could hear that really gross ringer. It's so strange because it's so nasal sounding, despite the fact that it's being played through the same full range speaker. Super weird. But let me plug it back in here, and hopefully all my memory keys and the directory have been saved. I know the time and date will be reset, but I'll just have to make a call for it to gather the time and date from the exchange.
Well, that's about all there is to show of the Northern Telecom, after Telecom in my case, M9316 business-oriented POTS phone, made from the mid-90s all the way through to at least the late 2000s. I think this is a really, really nice phone. I love the features that it has. I love the design of it, the aesthetic design. I think this is just the right combination of business-oriented utilitarianism mixed with just a tiny bit of cosmetic roundness to make it a little bit attractive. I think it's just the perfect medley of that. It's a very attractive phone, and I love the layout and everything. I love the display, again, that perfect mix of utilitarianism, but also having some really nice functionality to it. And it's just a great quality phone, and I think if you're looking for a nicely featured POTS phone to use on your own telephone line, I would definitely recommend this one. They're reasonably affordable to get, reasonably common to find, And yeah, it's just a very nice phone that'll last a long, long time if properly taken care of. So that's my take on this phone, which is now the main phone, at least currently, in my apartment, hooked up to my phone line. And I'm really glad to have it and really enjoy using it. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.